my dear brothers and sisters, the context of the gospel of today is the disciples, Peter, James, and John, coming down from Mount Tabor, where they had an experience of the transfiguration. They had seen Jesus speaking with Moses and Elijah. At the same time, they had heard a voice from heaven say, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him." And at that moment, they are somehow 99.9% sure that Jesus is surely the Messiah. And that is why they want to ask this fundamental question to him. I mean, if Jesus was to appear here, I'm sure everybody would want to ask a question that has been disturbing him all his life, or disturbing her all her life. So at this moment, they're asking, now, we seem to have seen you. You are the Messiah, but what about what the scribes are talking about? What about what Israel believes, that Elijah has to come first before the Messiah? How comes you've come first? We seem to have known that you are the Messiah, but yet we have not had any experience of another Elijah as we believe. And then Jesus says to them, which is a kind of a disturbing answer, he says, yes, Elijah is to come. So, meaning Elijah is still to come. But Elijah has already come. So, something cannot be and not be at the same time. You know it, that Elijah is not like he has come and then he will still come. No. Elijah will come surely, but he is still to come. What does this mean? First of all, when he says Elijah has already come, he directly refers to John the Baptist. In fact, the apostles understand that he's talking about John the Baptist, and that is stated in the gospel of today. And they said, yes, John the Baptist came, but he was not recognized. Remember, read already in the same Matthew's gospel, chapter 11, verse 14, he says that believe, if you want, you will believe with me that Elijah has already come. And it seems pointing to John the Baptist. In Luke's gospel, the evangelist says that John the Baptist would come in the spirit of Elijah. And this was the prophecy that was already laid in through the prophet Malachi chapter 3, where he says that the one who is coming before the Lord is going to come in the spirit of Elijah. So therefore, the apostles already know that John the Baptist came in the form of Elijah, with the spirit of Elijah, not incarnated as Elijah, but with the spirit of Elijah. But then the question remains, what about the Elijah who is to come that Jesus talks about? Because he says, yes, Elijah is to come, but he has already come. I think Jesus here refers to his own second coming, because he says that when he comes, he will make everything to be the way it is supposed to be. And that refers to Jesus himself. That once Jesus comes, he will make all things right again. And that is what we are looking forward to. First of all, as we celebrate Christmas, we are looking forward to the coming of Christ into our hearts to make all things right, to make all things new. But also, we are referring to the second coming of Jesus, the parousia, as we call it. When once Jesus comes, then the new heaven and the new earth would appear again. But then, how is this related to us? First of all, that as we celebrate Christmas, we must be ready to welcome Christ into our hearts. We must open up our hearts to him. He stands at the door and he's knocking. He cannot come in, he cannot break into our hearts, but he expects us to open the door for him to come in and to make things new in our lives. And secondly, I think we can be tempted to say, how comes these people could never recognize John the Baptist when he came? They persecuted him. And how comes even when Jesus came, they could not recognize him. They could not see that he's the Messiah, and they ended up crucifying him. They were surely blinded. Well, in our own days, we still have things going on in our lives, and still we do not recognize him. We do not still recognize Jesus in our lives. We are celebrating today the feast, the memorial of John of the Cross, who went through a lot of suffering in his life. Even when he was 14, he was already going to the hospital to take care of people who were terminally ill. And in those experiences, as painful as they were, he was able to see God in them. He was able to have a very mystical experience of God in those situations. Later on, when he wanted to reform the Carmelite order, he ended up in prison. And in the darkest of all cells, he recognized the presence of Jesus. That even in the midst of the darkness of his life, he was able to recognize Jesus. He in fact said, if you don't find love, create love and you would find it. If you don't find joy, create joy and you would find it. If you don't find peace, create peace and you would find it. In other words, he was able to find Jesus in every situation of his life. But the tendency for us at times is that once we are struck by any little persecution, every little trial, myself included, the first thing that we think about is, oh, God has forgotten me. God is not there again. God does not answer my prayers. No. We must be able to recognize that even in the darkest moments of our lives, Jesus is still there. In fact, he was the one who experienced the darkest moments of his life at the cross when he felt abandoned by the Father, and he united his prayer with ours, the way we feel. Lord, why have thou forsaken me? Lord, why have thou abandoned me? Why have you forgotten me? That is how we think at times. If only we could learn from this story that we heard today in the Gospel, and from the story of John of the Cross, who recognized God even in the darkest moments of his life. And this requires grace. This cannot be done by us alone. And that is why we have to ask God that in his love and in his mercy will reach out that grace to us and help us to be able to recognize him even in the darkest moments of our lives, as well as in good moments.